We're live.
Woohoo. This is Literary Roadhouse. One short story once a week. I'm Gerald.
I'm Anise.
And I'm Rami.
This week we're discussing Laughing and Turning Away by Patrick Holloway. This story won second place in, you guessed it, the Raymond Carver Contest of 2017. If you haven't read the story yet, pause the podcast and read the story. There's a link in the show notes. This week we're following the story of an unnamed female narrator from Porto Alegre in Brazil, but studying on an exchange program in Wilmington, North Carolina. Back home, she has learnt she's dumb and that men dominate and women are regularly demeaned. In Wilmington, she spends time with her girlfriend, Sarah, and enjoys considerable freedoms. But when her brother gets shot and killed, she has to return home to Brazil and quickly, yet uneasily, slots back into the male-dominated lifestyle which she had once left behind.
Okay, good summary. So what everyone think about the story? Let's start with Rami, because Gerald and I already discussed before recording we're bad.
Yeah, we're bad, yeah.
I thought it was competently written.
Oh.
Wow. Right out the gate. Wow. Right out the gate with a harsh. Yeah, anyone who's new to the show, that's not a good thing on this show.
Oh, dear.
Okay, Gerald?
I really quite liked it. Maybe I'll like it less when we get into it, but at the moment I really like it.
Okay. I struggled. Well, struggle isn't even the right word. I found myself often wondering, where's this going? There's really only one passage that I actively enjoyed. Everything else was just kind of, I don't know. It just felt a little flat for me, and I want to get into why that is, because there are some things that I liked in it. There are I have, moments where I laughed and things like that. But overall, I'm just and I wanna know why that is. So, Gerald, why don't we start with why you liked it?
Yes, hang on, can I just turn this? Yeah, it's on the wrong microphone. I shall edit that out, of course. I liked it. I liked it because I like the sort of conflict between her two situations when she was back home, and the way she was treated back home, and yet she was enjoying considerable freedom when she's in Wilmington. She's got a female girlfriend. She's got a girlfriend. She's experiencing American life, which is very different to how it is in Brazil. So I quite like that, and I quite like the fact that it shows it's got misogyny as a sort of clear thing running right through it, and the treatment that she gets at the hands of men back home is pretty appalling. And yet, when her brother gets killed, then she of course goes home, and she's persuaded to stay home. So I like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think for me, the misogyny is a strong point. To the one passage that I liked really well is when the narrator is picturing her brother standing up to somebody with a gun, and she's like, it's because he's never suffered all of these small indignities, because he's never had somebody force themselves on him, grab him. He's never had to deal with anyone in any way undermining him or making him feel unsafe. He just has this overinflated sense of confidence, so he stands up to a gun. And I sort of like that, especially because machismo is a thing that is talked about a lot in Latin culture. And so that was my favorite section, was not so much, and we'll get back to this, not so much when she's reflecting misogyny in her own life, because there was a way where it felt like it didn't really hit. Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a bit, because I feel like that has to be delicately handled. But, there is the part where it's describing why her brother might be this way, and the way that misogyny, because throughout the story, she's meditating on how it has had ill effects on her, but then the flip side, the ill effects it had on her brother that ultimately led to his death as well. That was my favorite part. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rami, anything about the misogyny?
Yeah, it was there. Can you explain the link again between her brother's death and her feelings of what it? Can you repeat what you said real quick?
Yeah, actually, maybe I should just find that passage. It's because towards the end, where she says, "And now the only man I have ever loved had gone and got himself shot. His utter self-worth was concrete, facing the eye of the gun. I imagine him thinking, I'm Rodrigo Montero. I'm made for greater things than a bullet." Or he simply would not allow something that was so rightfully his to be taken from him, no matter the value. He was not used to being interrupted at dinner or called upon from study to answer the front door. He had never been asked to take notes in a meeting because he had the prettiest handwriting, had never been shouted at from a motorbike or whistled at while walking the dog. And it's like a list that keeps going about all the ways that women are then taught to just, she keeps talking about stay mute, bite your cheek, turn around, put your head down. And that he has the flip side of that where it's like the downside to machismo where then guys feel like they have to be even more masculine and nothing can be taken from me, even in a ridiculous situation where it's just your wallet and a phone or your life, right? That was my favorite part.
Because I did want to ask about a sentence also towards the end where the narrator says, "I tried not to feel guilty, for there was nothing to be guilty about, but at night I still dreamed that every touch of Sarah brings him one step closer to the bullet." And I didn't get the connection there.
Gerald.
I think here we go. Excuse me, sorry. That wasn't. It's kind of difficult because she feels guilty because she's been enjoying her life away from home, and the longer she spent away from home, the closer it got to her brother catching that bullet. So that's I think that's where what I understood from that she was there was a certain time at which her brother would die, and while she was enjoying her own life, he was getting closer to dying.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of with Rami on that. I felt that ending felt a little forced to me because it's like the way that her guilt regarding Sarah then leads to the death, I didn't quite follow because the rest of the story, she's not really feeling guilty about the freedoms that she is enjoying being away from Brazil. Like there isn't enough about that then when that suddenly comes in at the end, you kind of need to like patch it on your own. And I didn't really see that like supported throughout the story. Like it didn't make sense with the character, but then I realized I actually don't know that much about the character, which kind of goes back to like, I think my biggest criticism that needs to be sort of delicately handled, which is like, I don't want to say that like a man can't write about a Brazilian woman's like lesbian story. No, but maybe because it's not like it was offensive or it wasn't insensitive. There was nothing in the portrayal that felt like a caricature or stereotype or anything. It just felt a little too surface. And I think that's why they always say to writers, write what you know, because I think there's a degree to which I just felt like everything that I'm seeing, even though it was, well handled, not at all offensive, not a stereotype, nothing. I'm like, that's not what I'm charging here. What I'm saying is it's just like it didn't really get deep enough. I didn't really feel like the characters, the way that the sexual harassment was affecting her, the way that she was starting to accept that she is a lesbian and having a girlfriend when she goes to college, like that story for some reason seemed to be missing a sort of intimacy that maybe has to do with the fact that the writer isn't of that group, right? Not that they handled it insensitively or anything like that, just like maybe that's what they say, a little bit like maybe that was the issue. It felt a little bit like what I kind of know without living that, without being a Brazilian woman who is told that, being a lesbian is taboo and having to repress that, what I would imagine it is, without hearing it from someone who's lived it. And I think that's what was missing for me.
Yeah, I can see that, and I can understand what you're saying. I understood it to be that it was just an accepted practice. She was born into that lifestyle. It said so a couple of times during the text that she was dumb, and yet she was pretty. So that's all she knew. That's the life she knew, and the way that things were sort of brushed under the carpet, and the way that women didn't speak out about things, all that sort of stuff. That is how life was for her back home, and I kind of wanted her to, because I saw a film last night called Brooklyn. It was about an Irish girl who went to Brooklyn and started a relationship there, had to come home, and would she go back or wouldn't she? And I was wanting the narrator to say, look, sorry guys, I want my new life out there and go back to Wilmington. But it seemed like she was destined to stay back in Brazil and become, the housefrau, the housewife, and be subjugated.
Mm-hmm. I also don't fully understand why she made the choice to stick to that, because again, the relationship with the father wasn't that well drawn throughout the story. So someone's like, because my dad said this is where you belong, okay. It's like, you already left once. Like, you have enough courage to do that. So I don't understand. She has a choice on like what, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why that was such a powerful reason for her to stay so close to achieving her dreams,
Yeah, I see what you mean now, actually. Yeah, because with the death of her brother, she had less of a reason to stay, really.
Mm-hmm.
She was very close to him and loved him, but yeah, why you would think, and especially when the brother got buried like the day after he died, and they couldn't wait for her to get back home.
Yeah, she has a girlfriend that she loves at college. She's about to graduate. So it's a little bit like, because the relationship with the father hadn't been as drawn out, or the way that she felt like constrained, or what those constraints were, or why. Because like, this is somebody who already has left. So, there was a certain degree of like, it just felt like the end just felt really sudden to me. The guilt and the choice to stay in Brazil.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to understand, isn't it, why she made that choice?
I got the impression that she was abroad temporarily anyway, because it's an exchange program. So I think either way, she was probably going to be returning at some point, but it was just sooner rather than later.
Yeah, again, why? You're going to come back anyway. Why not finish it?
Oh, well, I mean, because, if you've had a loss in the family, I can understand. I mean, people take time off away from their studies for that reason, to stay at home. So she wanted to be closer to home.
Yeah, that's not really how it was written, though, but yeah. Yeah. I almost feel like I wish, like, focus on the machismo part of it and how it affects both sides and zero in on that. But then I was also trying to do this thing with the girlfriend that I didn't fully understand. Like, maybe if the relationship was happening in Brazil and there was people talking about it and they were paying for the consequences of it immediately, but she wasn't paying for the consequences of it. So it just felt a little bit like, why? You can go back, finish the degree, continue to have your I don't know. It just felt a little forced at the end. But yeah.
Yeah, it's quite difficult, really, because now you say that, I was quite happy with the story and quite enjoyed it, but yeah, it does seem a little flat, a little bit shallow.
Can I take a wild, overly bold guess as to why you liked it? And I think it's also one of the reasons I don't like it.
Okay.
All right. I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the tone of this strikes me as a very Gerald tone. It's got that kind of melancholy, flowy, kind of like subdued. It's not overly emotional. And you love those stories. And I think, and this is not the fault of the author at all, this is just me overdosing on melancholy tone. I'm getting really over it really fast, because we read so many short stories for this podcast, and a lot of them tend to have this tone. And I'm just like, oh, especially if that tone is used, but there's a lot of substance beneath it, it's like I can tolerate it more. But then when I feel a little like in this story, which is it's like it's still too flat anyway, it's almost like there's a way in which the melancholy tone is giving like a gravitas to the story. It's like making it feel like it has more substance. But then when you scratch a little and it's not really there, or I'm not finding it, a listener can correct me if there's something I'm missing. Then it's almost like I resent it. Where I'm just like, do not come at me with this tone unless there's like a reason for this like melancholia right now. Did you agree?
Yeah, and it's quite a common thing for short story writers. I think it's they get into themselves and they get the sort of woe is me, woe is life sort of thing, and there's it's a very deep, rich what's this? The seam of storytelling, this sort of sadness and dealing with conflicts in life and all that, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's quite common, but yeah.
And again, like I feel like I don't want to lay this at this author's feet because this is very much on trend right now. This is clearly winning awards, right? He came second place. Like this is, and it's just me personally. I'm just like over it, and I feel like, was it Ray Bradbury who was like angry that short stories didn't have enough plot, and it was all just like introspection. And I'm like, oh, I'm turning into him. I'm turning to like cranky old Bradbury who was like grumpy about this. Now I'm turning into that person, and this isn't the fault of the short story authors who do this at all. This is me.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the point of the podcast, isn't it? We are, we don't claim to be wonderful analysts or literary geniuses. We're just coming to these stories as people, and we like them or we don't like them. We're allowed to not all do like them. So so if that's your particular perspective at the moment, then that's valid.
I feel like my perspective got here because of this podcast. Yeah, reading so many with this tone. I had like a kind of not so nice analogy, but it's like I feel like this tone. It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's like the voice of like depth without necessarily guaranteeing it every time. And I think that's why I don't like it sometimes because. It's a little bit like, no. This is like, it's like a set piece, but it's not like the play itself. So I'm just like, I think that's what's bothering me about it.
And I suppose also, when you look at it, girl in Brazil, girl goes to, and is mistreated generally. Girl goes to America, has a nice time. Girl goes back to Brazil, gets mistreated again. That's sort of it. I mean, it's nicely done, and I think I think the the idea of people laughing at her and walking away is quite that sort of thing that sort of thing comes back, and she's the one walking away now, but.
Well, I will say that's one of my positive notes is that at least the sort of theme of laughing and turning away, it's a nice inflection point that repeats itself throughout the story for character development or plot. So when the first time she realizes like her vulnerability, the first time she faces the barrel of a gun, plus it has that sort of sexist layer to her. He's like, next time it could have been worse. He's alluding, does he grab her ass? I think he does. Like that part, so that realization happens with that phrase, and then again when she pretty much decides that she's going to go back to Brazil and leave Sarah happens with that phrase. So that is being used as an inflection point, right? Like that's happening, but it's just the inflection's not enough. Like that's the thing. I just need more peaks and valleys.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Rami, how did you feel about the melancholy tone or the writing? Aside from
the writing. So I didn't bother to look this up because I was hoping one of you would remember, but it reminded me of, I think it wasn't just one, but several stories in the past where I had to Google at least one word in every other sentence, and how that made the story choppy and interrupted the flow. So it was one of those again. And on a side note, the first of those incidents or instances happened with the word sorte. And when I looked it up, that also has a meaning in French when she's being held up and the man tells her that she had sorte, which in French I guess translates to kind. So I think you don't definitively know that the narrator is in Brazil until I think 5 paragraphs into it when she's talking about her flight plan. So assuming that, and what gave it away for me was that thankfully in the beginning they mentioned that the author is living and teaching in Brazil. So that's what allowed me to look at it. But had I not been given that context, I think an average reader may have taken some time to be able to geographically place the setting of the story.
Yeah, that's what you said is what my sort of only outright criticism of it is the sort of random placement of Portuguese words in it, and I don't understand why people do that because it doesn't the Portuguese word doesn't add an extra layer or an extra inflection or an extra meaning to the text. It's just a Portuguese word which can be translated into English, which I did afterwards. But you just think, why do that? You're an Irish writer, you're an English speaker, or you're English and Portuguese. So why drop these words in? I don't understand that.
I don't mind it when it's the voice of the narrator and it's giving you a flavor of who the narrator is. And I think in this story, it didn't bother me. But again, I get to cheat because Portuguese is very similar to Spanish. So I just guessed all of them without looking it up. But I can see what you're saying because I like it when it's in any language, when it's giving me the way that the narrator speaks and the narrator's a little bit more colorful or just like a little bit, like a bigger presence. And this one, when you have this very melancholy tone and this sort of like drifting thing, I agree. Like, why? It seems very unnecessary. But like, I love when Junot Diaz does it because it just feels like the ones that he chooses are well thought out and funny. Like the example with luck, with the word luck, sorte. Like, why? Like, why do you need that in this? Why wasn't it just luck, right? Yeah. What did it add? Where, I feel like when Junot Diaz does it, it's like a punchiness or really like an insult that will not translate well. And it just adds like a certain like authenticity to it that doesn't feel forced. And it's just the way the narrator speaks. So I think that's the difference. It didn't bother me too much in this story, but I can see how it would like be a bit, it does feel maybe not completely necessary.
Yeah, I think I can see if you've got a character speaking and someone says something to it and he just sort of spits out a word in their own language, and which you can sort of understand that and it adds meaning and it sort of comes from the heart because that's their own language. You can read a lot more into that, but just sort of interspersing random words at odd points, it's just annoying for a non-Portuguese / Spanish speaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think it necessarily has to be in dialogue, especially when it's written in first person like this, which is supposed to be close. But again, it needs to feel. Yeah, it might be because again, this character didn't feel alive enough for me, and it needs that for me to be like, yeah, that's how this person speaks and thinks. Because in first person, everything written, even if it's not dialogue, is like their thoughts, basically, right? You're just constantly in their head, so it can still exist there, but it needs to feel part and parcel to the way the character is drawn, at least for me. Yeah,
I can see that.
Mm-hmm. But back on the positive side, I did laugh out loud a few times. So that was good. Well, once I think it was definitely an intentional joke. And the second time, maybe I'm laughing maybe it was intentional, maybe it wasn't. But okay, so the first one was definitely a joke. Was when Sarah, the roommate, is like, "You guys have Netflix? You have Victoria's Secret? Can you teach me Spanish?" Like, doesn't know that's Portuguese in Brazil. That was good. That was funny.
No, that was good. Yeah.
And the second time, it's with the grandmother. Let me find it. It's when she's no longer wearing the cross. Okay. It wasn't written like a joke. It goes, at lunch on Sunday, grandmother noticed the absence of a cross around my neck, but said nothing. She frowned slightly at her plate and blessed herself. Okay, look, I know Cubans and Brazilians aren't the same, but there's some cultural similarities here. That is a passive-aggressive move by a grandma, okay? Like, that made me laugh because, like, that is intentional. The crossing yourself randomly, like, I mean, maybe she was crossing herself before eating a plate, but it also, like, that's like a passive-aggressive move that I have seen with grandmas.
Really?
So it reminded me of that.
Grandmas. Ha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe she was just crossing herself because she's about to eat, but I think it's a lot funnier if she's crossing herself because she can't believe that her grandchild isn't wearing the cross.
No. So, I think so.
No. Do you guys have anything else to add? Those are all my notes.
Nope, that's right.
Wow. Okay. Go, Rami.
All right, I'll give it a 3.
It's a rare time when I start off at a mark and then it goes down. So 4.
Okay, and also for our listeners who are new, it's on a scale of 1 to 6, and they're called Bradburys after Bradbury. Okay, Bradburys. I'm going with a 4 as well. I feel like I was extra critical, so I'm like, why 4? Why not just neutral? Because I still, it made me want to read about more Brazilian stuff. I really liked the passage about the brother standing up to somebody with a gun. Like that part I was really engaged with. I like that. I wish there was more of that. And it makes me want to read more like Brazilian stories.
There you go.
Maybe I'll find one for the book club.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Okay, so it's time for the quiz. So what stories would you like to suggest for next time?
So I'm submitting a story that Christy, our guest, a while ago, our guest, Christy Lynn Belluni, had recommended, which was Marry the Sea by Marie Helene Bertino. It's in Time Out magazine.
And the story I'm submitting is Wyatt Thirst by Brendan Bowles.
Okay, so we have quiz, and it's about the hometown of this character, Porto Alegre.
Oh
gosh!
So we're going to really get into this character now. We're going to find out a lot more about her by doing a quiz about her hometown. Very good. Okay, question 1 to Anais. We know Porto Alegre, I'll stop doing the accent in a minute, is the capital of the Brazilian state Rio Grande do Sul. But what does Porto
everyone
Alegre...
knows.
Yeah, obviously. What does Porto Alegre translate to in English? Is it joyful harbour? This is cheating, actually. Joyful harbour, doorway to riches, or fast exit?
Joyful.
Yeah, of course it is.
I cheated. Sorry. By
bilingual. I think. Right. Romy, how dangerous is Porto Alegre?
Very.
Indeed. Where is it on the world's most violent cities? Is it 89th? Is it 42nd? Or is it 35th? '89, 42, 35.
35.
Wrong. It's 42, obviously.
Oh, okay.
Anais, where is Porto Alegre? Is it in the north, the south, the east, or the west of Brazil?
East?
No, it's in the south.
Southeast?
Well, it's the southeast, yeah, but it's
I was going to say, it's got to be on the coast.
Yeah.
It's a port.
It's more south than east.
Okay.
Rami, how many rivers form the delta on which Porto Alegre stands?
Mm.
How many rivers? Is it 2, 3, 4, or 5?
It's 3.
It's not 3, it's 5.
Oh.
I'm a bit disappointed, actually. I thought you'd know a bit more about this town. But we're improving our knowledge. Anise, unsurprisingly, the biggest percentage of the population in that town, that city, are Catholic. But what is the second most popular belief? Is it Protestant? Is it no religion? Is it Spiritist? Or Jewish or Jehovah's Witness?
Hmm. 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 I was actually just reading about the rise of evangelicals and Pentecostals. That wasn't on the list in Brazil overall, not Porto Alegre. But it's probably not Protestant. Jehovah Witness?
No, that's very, very small. It was Protestant.
It was Protestant?
It was Protestant, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and no religion. It was in that order, actually, that I read them, so I was too lazy to reorder them. Rami, there are many popular events and festivals celebrated in Porto Alegre, but which of the following is held next month in April? Is it the National Festival of the Sunflower? Is it the Worldwide Pinhole Photography Event? Is it the International Jigsaw Competition? Or is it the Brazilian Bagpipe Symposium?
Sunflower.
No, it's the Worldwide Pinhole Photography Event.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
so disappointed. It is not very good. Annie's, the Metro. Thank you, Wikipedia. The Metro Rapid Transit System is very popular in that city. It is in total nearly 43 kilometres in length, split between ground level and elevated sections. How much of the 43 kilometres is elevated? Is it 5 kilometres, 7 kilometres, 12 kilometres, or 18 kilometres? 43 in total. How much is elevated?
What were the numbers?
5, 7, 12, 18.
12?
Is the correct answer. Well done. You know your rapid transit systems. And
Educated.
Rami,
Yes.
yeah, I know. Rami, you can't win, alas. But
Yeah.
never mind. There are many notable people who were born in Porto Alegre, as you would expect. Amongst them is the world famous sportsman Luan Oliveira. But in which sport does he excel? Is it volleyball, soccer, skateboarding, or gymnastics?
Volleyball.
Skateboarding.
Oh.
There you go. So, Anais wins. Well done.
Listen, I'm pretty sure Rami knew the answers and he was just intentionally saying the wrong ones because he never ever wants it to be his story. Yeah. Because he doesn't want to come up with a quiz.
Ironic because this time I would have actually wanted it, but it's okay.
This time you would have wanted it. Wow. Okay. Well, we are reading Marry the Sea by Marie-Helene Bertino. But before you go, break free of your internet favela by visiting the comment section at literaryroadhouse.com and letting us know what you thought of this story. Or hey, like the narrator misses Brazilian food, maybe you missed our literary musings between episodes. Follow us on Twitter at Lit Roadhouse or on Facebook for literary snacks. Or maybe you're like me and want more Brazilian tales. Join the Literary Roadhouse Book Club, a monthly show that discusses full fiction novels. I'll definitely have my eye out for Brazilian novels sometime this year. Ciao, listener. But hey, don't just laugh and turn away. Consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/literary roadhouse. Every donation, no matter how small, helps us bring you more content at better quality. And as always, share this podcast with the passive-aggressive grandma in your life. Until next time, read a good story.
Very good.